Look at all these cool people. Hi, Mary.
Hi, Molly.
You look marvelous.
Oh, thank you. Merci.
To land, and that is in towards Georgia by Monday afternoon. Still a Category 1 storm.
We're getting a little
Atlanta. We're
weather update.
Yes. We'll do a little selective muting. Yay. Gives us a minute until we get right up to the top of the hour. Let's see here. Get my screens open. Okay. Well, welcome everyone. Yahoo! I am Molly Gordon, and this is the Wholeness Hangout, an approximately monthly free gathering to explore how to live wisely and well, usually through the lens or the understanding of the three principles of mind, consciousness, and thought, as articulated by Sydney Banks. And I always like to leave myself room to color outside the lines. My guest today, I am so happy to have Mary Schiller back. Mary was a guest first, I think, a couple of years ago. This is her third appearance on the Wholeness Hangout. I met Mary in La Conner, Washington at a Pransky and Associates professional training a couple years ago. I just immediately fell in love. I fell in love with her mind. I fell in love with her spirit. I was bowled over by her understanding of and ability to articulate the three principles. And I'm really excited to rock out today on the topic of money. So welcome, Mary.
Thanks, Molly.
I love how you build this as, there was a big fight in London, I think, recently. So, this is kind of the three principles money fight of the century.
That's right. Did you like that?
I loved it. Yeah, because it happens that Mary and I appear to be doing entirely different things with money in our businesses. And so I thought it would be really fun to have this conversation. And as I was walking this morning, Mary, it occurred to me that this is kind of like I get to find out what the heck I think I'm up to. I don't talk about it that much, as well as finding out what you're up to and hopefully revealing something about principles underneath both of those things. So I'm thrilled.
That sounds great to me.
Yeah. And is there anything else you'd like to say about yourself by way of introduction?
I'm an author. I've written and self-published a lot of books, all based in the three principles. And I've been working as a coach professionally now for about a year and a half, although I coached people for a little while before that, just kind of on the fly. And recently, my focus has been turning more towards helping people who are either working for themselves or who want to be working for themselves, and always, again, coming at it from this principles angle. And kind of also another group of people are those who feel sort of stuck in some area of life and who want to have some faster way of getting unstuck.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. One of the things that has really tickled and intrigued me about your work is how well you're able to grasp the implications of the principles for just dissolving obstacles, but you do it in such a charmingly realistic and concrete way. It's just, because I have a real antenna for well, let's just call it what it is, a bullshit meter for people promising instant results with shallow credentials.
Got it, yeah.
Just saying, I just have that thing. But you don't do that. And it always fascinates me. So I look pretty closely at what you say, what you point to, and how you operate. And it's pretty cool.
Well, part of it is I'm really not very good at that at BSing. So I think that's why it's just not something that I don't think I'm actually capable of doing that. It's just not in my consciousness at all. So yeah, I'm glad I passed the test.
Yeah, you totally did. And because I don't want to forget, I just want to note for folks that she's produced an incredible body of work. A lot of it is available, as it happens, for little or no cost. She's got a SoundCloud, I don't know if you call it a channel or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's just full of great stuff. I was listening to Sun this morning. She's got a number of ebooks out on Amazon that are very modestly priced. From time to time, some of them are even free. I don't know if any are right now. And it's a great way to get really good, solid help for a small investment. And I want to make sure people know about all those great resources you offer.
Thanks, Molly. I appreciate that.
Yeah. And what's the best website for people to find you on these days? I think you have several, but
yeah, I have a couple, but I think the best one is my name, maryschiller.com.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So what the heck are you up to with money?
Well, Molly, this was an area of my life that had always been really tough for me. I don't know if anybody on this call or watching the replay can relate to it, but it just seemed like for a really, really, really long time, like longer than I really care to even admit to, it was an area of major stress. And this is the weird thing, because I wasn't even totally aware of that until somebody pointed it out to me. In fact, the person who pointed it out to me was my daughter. Oh. She said to me one day, she's like, "Mom, you talk about money more than anybody I know." And I wasn't even aware that I was doing that. And clearly I had a lot of thinking about money that was coming out verbally as well. And I kind of stopped me in my tracks. And at that time, I didn't really know what to do about that, but it was just sort of a little light bulb of awareness kind of came on at that point. And over time, I started noticing it myself that, wow, I really think about money a lot, and not in a nice way. Mm-hmm. It was a lot of really stressed out, scary, apocalyptic style thinking related to money. And I'm really hoping that there's somebody watching this who can relate to that, because it does make you feel kind of alone when you're in that space. And so I'm trying to think of when it was. I think it was maybe about a year and a half ago or so. I started to have some insights around this for myself. I started to realize that, like some other thinking I didn't really want to engage with, I didn't have to engage with that kind of thinking either. That it was actually optional for me to feel stressed about money. And when I started to see that, even a sliver of that, it started to completely shift the way that I perceived money, the way that I made money, the way that I spent money, and just the whole landscape of money has, over this past year and a half or so, completely changed, where now I see it as a really fun topic, something very creative, something that I enjoy exploring in myself and with other people. And I just find it really exciting. It doesn't seem scary to me in the least, which is kind of miraculous for me to say, because I never, ever thought I would get to that point, ever.
That's pretty dramatic. To say that money doesn't seem scary to me in the least is in itself a pretty remarkable statement.
Yeah, and I don't want it to, I don't want people to think, oh, she's got millions of dollars in the bank, therefore that's not the case at all.
Yeah.
But I've just, really, when I think about where I was with this whole topic just a couple of years ago, versus where I am now, it's just like I don't even recognize that person anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know what she was thinking, but she's not really here anymore.
Wow. That's so fun.
Mhm.
I just want to remark to folks, I've been muting people because background noise that's trivial to you can be really startling to those of us who don't share your context, so we don't know where that garbage truck sound or the cat scratching is coming from. But feel free to unmute yourself and rejoin the conversation at any time. I also turned off some cameras on people that looked like they didn't want to be seen. You know, they were pointing at the ceiling, or there was a Post-it note over them. There's a control at the bottom of your screen if you're on a computer, and you mouse over the bottom. Next to the video camera, there's a little arrow, and you can turn your camera on and off by clicking on that camera. So I don't mean to exclude you visually. It just helps my recording look better if I turn off cameras of folks who aren't participating on video. So feel free to unmute yourself. Feel free to use the chat to ask questions. There is a chat icon also if you mouse over the bottom of your screen. If you're on an iPad or an iPhone or other smartphone or tablet, you may have to fiddle around and look for 3 dots and find extra settings, but all of these options are available on those as well. So please feel free to speak up and join the conversation when you have questions. Okay, so Mary, what is it that you, how do I even want to ask this question? So it looks like you're all excited about making a heap of money and helping women make heaps of money. Is that an accurate statement?
That's accurate. Yeah. And it's not that I'm excluding men, because I do have male clients too. But part of what happened to me recently was a few months ago, I decided to re-release a memoir that I had written and self-published back in 2012. And I had published it under a pseudonym. And so a few months ago, I decided to re-release it under my real name. And I wanted to add an appendix to it that really explained, you know, what had happened since I had put the book out earlier, and how I had a very different understanding of my experience. My book was about domestic violence and trauma, and how my experience of that had completely been shifted. And I was no longer dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder and things like that. And as I was rereading the memoir, I was really struck by something in there, which was how little worth I saw in myself before, and how little I valued myself. I was absolutely incapable of seeing myself as valuable to anybody. I mean, really anybody. The only person that I really felt I was serving any purpose for was my daughter. And as I say in the book, I only was living long enough for her to turn 18, essentially. And after that, I didn't really see any point for my existence. And it wasn't like I was depressed or suicidal or anything like that. It was just like, well, okay, my job here is done, so whatever. And it was really startling to me to see myself describing myself in that way. And so what came out of that was this sense of, you know, I really would love to help women to see their worth in this world in some way. And an easy, if you will, way to see that is to help women who are working for themselves to charge more for their services, because it seems like, I don't know if this is true for men, but it seems obvious to me that women tend to undercharge for the value that they give professionally. And so that's a very new initiative that I started back in late June, early July. And I'm still kind of figuring out how I want to help in that area. But it just became obvious to me that that was something that maybe I could talk about.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And how do how does your understanding of the three principles inform or affect your understanding of money or the way you share this invitation to women to charge more?
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the first things that I talk about is, or one of the fundamental things I talk about is the fact that worth is innate. That there's nothing out there that can measure our worth. And that, this idea that we could ever measure ourselves in that way is just completely false. And what that does is then it sort of clears the table, if you will, for us to then start playing this money game. I see it as a game more than anything else, sort of a creative, fun game. And the pricing part and, how much you earn and all of that, all of a sudden doesn't seem quite so life and death as it used to seem to me before. It doesn't seem quite so serious when we know that worth and value are infinite and innate and aren't measured by a dollar figure, or, as I'm living in France now, a euro figure. And so that seems to really help people to separate the two things, to separate how much they're charging from something from their feelings about their worth and value. And in that conversation, I actually never discussed the principles per se, but it's definitely a current that's running underneath everything.
Yeah, that's so interesting. My evolution or shift toward the whatever game I'm playing, and game is precisely the way I think of it also, began with a coaching conversation, or at least was a pivot point, was in a coaching conversation I had in the middle of a mentor coach training program. And I was the client for the day. We took turns coaching, mentoring, and observing, blah, blah, blah. And actually the coach was a very young, she's the least experienced coach in the group. She was also possibly one of the better coaches in the group. And I came to her with this problem. It's maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And the problem was that I just didn't feel like charging a lot of money anymore. I had been charging at the top of the life and tiny business coaching world. And I'd been charging at the top of it for years. And for a year or two, I hadn't wanted to do that. And I'd been fiddling with my rates downward and actually in a lot of ways avoiding even having to talk about it, which had a bad impact on the number of clients that were coming in. And I said, I don't know what's up with this because I've been around the block. I know my value. What am I telling myself? I'm in some story about I'm not worth it or blah, blah, blah. And she asked me something along the lines of, why don't you trust yourself? Or what would happen if you trust yourself? Something like that. And suddenly it was like, forget it. I don't know why this is happening. I don't care. I just don't want to do it this way anymore. And this whole freedom showed up to just play it differently. And I didn't have to find out what neurosis was in my way. I didn't have to, am I suddenly not valuing myself? Am I suddenly afraid to have money conversations? Do I suddenly have no confidence in people's ability to take care of themselves and make their own decisions? Do I no longer think people need to make an investment? Blah, blah, blah. I had learned so much about money over the years. I don't care. I'm just going to find out what's coming forward. And over a period of about 3 years, it evolved until in the last 3 months or so, I've just pretty much taken pricing off the table. And I say pretty much because I love the freedom to make it up in any moment, any way I want to. And one of my favorite quotes is from Emerson, I think. consistency is the hobgoblin of small minds.
Right. Right.
A foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds. So when I did a program recently, I actually put a price on it because it seemed easier and kinder to the people who were looking at the program. But by and large, I engage in a conversation with people about what would this look like if we regarded, if I regard the work I do as a gift that was given to me, that I'm giving out into the world. It looks like I'm giving it to you, Mary, but you're just the node of the world that's the local recipient. Mm-hmm. And that the value is going to come back to me through you or any other node. And there are lots of other conversations we can have about it. But it's a different way of looking at where value comes from, where it goes. And I'm playing with it. Mm-hmm. It's like I was so clear that I didn't want to be on a mission to change capitalism, revolutionize money, convince people to do things differently. And it was actually on another Wholeness Hangout with Nicole Uganen in a conversation leading up to that, where she said, well, you don't actually have to be on a mission. You don't need a theory. There not only is no rule saying you have to do it the way the dominant culture is doing it, there's no rule that says you have to change the dominant culture in order to do it differently. Mm-hmm. So I love hearing you say game, because that's the predominant metaphor I have for what I'm up to, is I'm just playing a different game, and I'll play it for as long as it blows my skirt up.
Oh, what a great visual.
Which is probably really politically incorrect, but I love that phrase.
Do you even wear skirts? No, I'm kidding.
I have been known to, but it's been a while.
Well, so what has happened since you've been doing that? What have you noticed?
Well, it's really interesting. I noticed that I am, well, I'm sure a lot of folks are interested in what's happened to the bank account. And one of the interesting things is, I wasn't
going to ask that, but yeah.
One of the interesting things is the bank account has stayed about the same.
Oh, okay.
So for X number of years, I've had a sort of set point, a comfort zone that I like my bank account to be in. And for me, that looks like 2 to 3 months of operating expenses and a little plus. And that's about where it hovers. I am still paying my bills. I'm going places and having fun. I spent way too much money on my granddaughter's birthday. I bought her $700 worth of dance performance tickets that I'm now thinking, what was I thinking? But, that's a different question. Yeah, the way I actually am with money in the rest of my life doesn't look like it's changed very much, if at all. Mm-hmm. I do notice that sometimes when I coach someone or work with someone, I wonder if or how I will receive a benefit. So it's interesting to watch my thinking about that. I got a very sweet email from a client last week that I hadn't heard from in over 2 months. I'd done an intensive with her. And just for folks' benchmark, it's common among my peers to charge anywhere from $4,000 to $15,000 and up for these intensives. And I hadn't heard from her. I usually send an invoice at the end of the month to folks with a little explanation of this gift economy and an invitation to them to reflect on the value they received, and then to reflect on how they might pay that value backward toward me or forward into the world. Mm-hmm. And a link to a video about many forms of wealth, not being just money. I didn't hear a word from her for 2 months. And then I get this email saying, beloved guru, and if you knew her, you would know that's funny. I've had so much fun researching ways to pay the work we did together backward and forward. May I please have your mailing address? Some of these things are going to be tangible, and some will be intangible and will need some explanation. Signed, your something apple blossom. I mean, it was just really, it was so fun on so many levels. So I'm just going, cool. You know, it's like all I really need to know. Well, what I really need to know is that I'm okay, no matter how this experiment turns out.
Mm-hmm.
What supports the continuing experiment is that I'm interested for my own reasons in noticing the ebb and flow of my anxious thinking about whether or not I'll have enough money, which is almost the least of it. I have more anxious thoughts about is the value of the work I'm doing being recognized? Are people taking advantage of me? It's interesting to just watch the mind decide what to worry about. And that kind of tickles and intrigues me. So that's, to me, a side benefit. It's not even like I'm trying to get over those thoughts. It's just interesting to notice that they come up. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it completely does. It completely does. And what's interesting is that I have similar kinds of thinking.
Doesn't really matter whether you're charging or not, does
exactly. It doesn't really matter. So kind of just do what you want, essentially, is what we're both saying.
Yeah.
You know, I have thoughts like that, like, wow, if I charge X, are people going to think I'm worth that? You know, that kind of thing. So one of the phrases that I keep hearing in my head, which is going to sound kind of strange, but I think it'll make sense, is, I wonder what I can get away with here.
Yes.
You know? And in a way, I sort of hear you doing the same thing.
Absolutely.
Just on another angle.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
so, in essence, it seems like we're operating from the same place. Mm-hmm. It's just being expressed in a different way. Mm-hmm. You know, I have certain reasons for wanting to make a certain amount of actual cash. Mm-hmm. Because certain institutions only want to be paid that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too.
So you're kind of stuck with it there. But I no longer see it as this this big scary mountain that I have to climb or something.
Right.
It doesn't have that. I mean, it really, money used to look kind of monstrous to me, to be frank. Mm-hmm. And I think it does for a lot of people.
Yes, I do too.
And it's a real relief to not see it that way anymore, and to more or less accept money as simply another form of expressing value and expressing creative output.
Yeah.
And input and all kinds of things. I had a really fascinating experience a couple of weeks ago. My daughter and I took a trip to the French Riviera, which we'd never seen before. And we decided to spend a day in Monaco. And I don't know if anybody watching this has ever been to Monaco, but talk about an expression of wealth.
Yeah.
I mean,
only in the movies.
Yeah. I mean, but the weird thing was we both had a similar reaction, which was, it wasn't so much people being ostentatious. It was more like, this is how people can express themselves when they have great amounts of cash. They can buy yachts that cost $10 or $15 million, and they can have these amazing homes up on the hillsides, and they can, have a woman in the public bathrooms who cleans the toilet after every use. And a guy, literally getting down and picking up the tiniest speck of paper off of the sidewalk to keep it clean. And it was just like, whoa, this is kind of an amazing place I'm in right now. Mm-hmm. And so to me, it was more of a feeling of excitement. And I think in the past, I would have gone to a place like that and had an overwhelming sensation of maybe jealousy or, or thinking, oh, these awful rich people. I don't know. I would have had a lot of kooky thinking like that. And this time it was so not that at all. It was
Yes.
actually really exciting and pleasurable to just be in an environment like that.
Yes.
So,
It's interesting. This is a much smaller version of it, but I was recently at a gathering of coaches at a beautiful home in Santa Fe. And it was, I have no idea what it cost, but it was a spectacular home, and the furnishings were spectacular, and everything was carefully chosen, and it was phenomenal. And I was so thrilled, and I appreciated how that was expressed. It was like, I'm really happy that people can do this. And
yeah,
what a cool thing to make. It was similar to, what a cool painting, what a cool piece of music.
exactly.
I saw some of your photos from Monaco, and it was kind of like Disneyland, and it's like, that's cool.
Exactly.
Not really my cup of tea, but very cool.
It was my cup of tea.
Yeah.
Like
Well, I can imagine enjoying it.
It's fine.
Yeah.
I can hang out here for a while. It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very cool.
Yeah.
There's a feeling, we the word that we've used in common here is game, but there's also, I think, a feeling of, well, there's an aspect of permission for sure for both of us, but there's a feeling of playfulness and freedom, I think, in what both of us are choosing to do. And I know that if I have an agenda for folks today, it's to kind of tune people's sensibilities to that feeling, so that you assess your relationship with money, your choices about money, your concerns about money with that feeling in mind, because it's my experience that that feeling has been a better guide for me than any analytical parsing of what I'm up to. Does that make sense to you too?
Totally. Like, I can't even really go to that analytical side of business very well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, the idea of coming up with some sort of business plan or something like that just seems really foreign to me. Now, that might be an inspirational thing for someone else.
Yes, exactly.
Great. Everybody's got their own, blueprint inside them they can follow. For me personally, that I can't really go there.
Yeah.
I'm much more about listening for something,
Mm-hmm.
and then responding to what I'm hearing within myself and seeing what happens, And what's been so funny about this is that I've really, and I've told this to some people recently, I have really just tried to stop listening to any kind of expectation type thinking, because I'm always wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always wrong. When I think I can make X amount per month or something, I can make a lot more than that. It's been proven to me. So I now just don't even look at those kind of numbers anymore, because I'm always so far off. It's ridiculous. So I just don't even go there anymore. So the idea of trying to sit down and make a plan of how to get to this amount of income or whatever just doesn't really do anything for me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. What was it that just flitted through my head? I don't know. It doesn't matter. I just want to make sure, feel free to ask a question in the chat or come off mute and ask a question. I'm muting folks as they come on just so you don't accidentally take over the screen, but feel free to re-unmute yourself if you intentionally unmuted. What has surprised you, if anything, Mary, about what you're discovering in your relationship with money, say in the last 6 months to a year?
Mm-hmm. That's a really good question. Well, I think one of the main things that I've discovered and that I have been sharing with people that seems to make a big impact on them, so I'll share it with your group here, is recognizing that money isn't something that's out there, that I have to sort of, I used to have this sensation that I had to go and hunt for it almost, or that I had to scrape for it or scratch for it. You know, it had that sort of feeling attached to it. And what I've seen instead is that I'm actually the source of money, and that you're the source of money, and that any money that has ever come into my life has been through me, whether it was through a job that I had, or, you know, working for myself or whatever. And that since I am the source of money and I am not able to be contained within anything, I'm, you know, essentially an infinite self, well, then so is money. So there's no limit to that. And, you know, I mean, I know this seems really weird, but going to a place like Monaco, or like I was just at the Disneyland park here near Paris a few days ago, and seeing that display of, of infinite, basically, wealth and all that. It's just really exciting to realize that that potential exists in every person. Mm-hmm. And I just feel like money is a fun way of seeing that.
Yes.
That it's sort of a tangible way to see the infinite, if you will. You know, I just find that really exciting.
That is exciting. Mm-hmm. That is exciting. You know, I remember what it was that crossed my mind. Many years ago, I read The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. Mm-hmm. And to this day, there are a few things that I read in that book that stick with me. And one of them is something that she said, or at least I think she said, about envy. And it was something along the lines of, if you find yourself, that envy is a sign that you want something for yourself. Or at least it can be. Mm-hmm. And I realized as I'm listening to you, I thought, you know, I used to envy people who could get away with playing in the gift economy. I used to have the feeling kind of like, well, nice for you, but I can't do it that way.
Yeah.
And it hadn't occurred to me, but that used to be part of my experience. And so I'm just going to share that with folks because it might be a hint to whatever path or kind of game you want to play with money looks like for you. Because I didn't have as much envy and don't have much envy for people who have stuff. I have admiration, appreciation, and sometimes I want something and then I usually get it. I can honestly say I have everything I want. Mm-hmm. So pay attention to the whispers of emotions and thoughts that may look negative to you and get curious about what the invitation might be there. Because maybe you're telling yourself you can't have something that actually you could. Because as you pointed to, Mary, the potential is in us. It's not out there.
Exactly, yeah.
The gift economy doesn't exist out there. The game I play is all in here. And it may or may not work out in the external world, just as a potter, master potter may have a train wreck on the wheel one day. Mm-hmm. You know, shit goes wrong. Shit doesn't work out. That's not, but so what? Because the next pot is in here too, and the one after that, and the one after that. So, Judy shared, it's amazing how much thing I have. How much thinking about the unfortunate plight of others, as if I know what's true about all of that. It's been a moralistic stance rather than what may be the truth behind this thinking. Yeah, I'm just curious. Judy, would you like to say any more about that? It's entirely up to you.
Yeah, I don't know if I even really expressed it clearly, but as I was listening to both of you, what I realized is my mind went to all the people that don't have enough, you know, yes. Don't have enough to eat, don't have, you know, shelter, all that. And it became, I realized as I was listening, it became like a stance for me.
Yeah.
and that it actually wasn't, it was oppressive in a way, that stance. And so there's a way in which I feel like I wasn't seeing it clearly. I'm not seeing it clearly. Or I'm not able to relate to it in a way, let's say, that's more creative. Because I get stuck in the feeling sorry for, or like it shouldn't be this way, or it's not fair. And that's not really helpful. It's not helpful thinking. So that's what I was experiencing. And it was great because it was kind of like this, I'll say it was a trance buster.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
In terms of the way that I've been thinking about the inequality that exists in the world.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you guys have anything to say to that, I would love to hear it.
Well, I shared a link in the chat to a short video I happened to see yesterday called Martin, about a homeless man who is really, really happy.
Yeah.
And looks like he's got everything he wants. He doesn't have shelter. I don't know where his food comes from. And it's a kind of a startling thing for those of us who, with great intentions, create our money stories out of worry about stories, worried stories about what other people have or don't have.
Right.
And I think there's room to care for others without worrying about them.
Yeah. And that really seems central. And I had the same experience when I lived in Africa. People there sometimes didn't even have much to eat, certainly didn't have much of anything, really, in a Western sense. And they were incredibly happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, it's that paradox.
They say be careful what you wish for. And I think that's true. Be careful for what we wish for ourselves and for others.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Well, I think too, if you live long enough, you're bound to go through periods of time where you have more, or you have less. And I have been through that many times and have seen absolutely zero correlation between my state of mind or how I feel, and now with this understanding of these principles, it's much more obvious to me why, but yeah, so I can see where you're coming from, Judy, and it's interesting that you sort of broke the trance there. One of the reasons why, and this may sound really pat, but I'm going to say it anyways, one of the reasons why I would like to help really awesome people make more money is so that we can give more of it to people who might need things like houses. I'd like to see more great people making great money so we can have more great things going on in the world for everybody.
Yeah.
So that's kind of always hovering in the back of my mind.
Yeah. And Anne made a comment in the chat. And by the way, I will post the chat transcript as well as the recordings. That I always have enough and more. Everything is always working out for me are two principles to live by. Worry is a negative prayer. And when I see it that way, that really works for me. And I think those are true statements, that we always have enough and more, and everything is always working out for me. And what I found is that when I try to believe those things, I can make myself really miserable.
Yeah, same here. Because I tried to live like that. When I was talking before about having all those stressful money thoughts,
yes,
I would try sort of in vain to spin them around. And that I just felt 10 times worse every time I tried to do that, because it just seemed to somehow magnify how crappy I was already feeling.
Yes.
And I was like,
you're
okay,
broke and a spiritual lightweight.
Exactly. Like, I am really messed up because I just can't fix this.
Right.
And what's so interesting is that you know, I spent money on programs that were supposed to help me fix my money stuff. And a lot of them were based on things like reciting affirmations and all of this stuff. And it just never had any effect except to make me feel like a failure even more.
Mm-hmm.
I just kept going in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
That's why I was so relieved at a certain point to realize that the less I paid attention to any of my money thinking,
Yes.
the more able I was to actually go forth and make some.
Yeah.
You know, I could sit here, I write about this in one of my books, and I have another one coming out soon about it too, that, you know, I could spend all my time trying to fix this money thing in my head, or I could just ignore it and go do something.
Make some money.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wasted a lot of time trying to play around with thinking that was already out there and not able to be played around with anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I
So,
could
and
have
again,
just
and I
been
want to make sure
creative and gone and done something with it.
yeah, absolutely. So the insight, when we experience an insight that we always have enough and more, that's profoundly helpful. When we try to adopt it as a belief that we should have, it gets in the way of the free flow of thought, including the fresh insight that we have enough and more.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Judy asks, yeah, and thank you, Anne, for clarifying that.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Yes.
What brought me to experimenting with the gift economy? What the pivotal thing was really that the invitation that coach gave me to trust myself, and I'm not in love with that language, but it just looked like fun.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't go away. I tried to get over it. I tried to see through it. And for a while, I thought I needed to have a philosophy, a plan, a message, and I was very clear I didn't want to go there. I have nothing to teach anybody about the right way to be with money. How would I know? And so the invitation to trust myself, whatever that means, and also Nicole's observation that I could make it up, that I didn't have to do it the way she did, that I didn't have to do it the way Charles Eisenstein, who's an author and philosopher whose work I admire. I didn't have to do it the way he does. I didn't have to have an overarching theory. And that freed me up, and I got curious about a way I would describe this in retrospect is I got curious about if this is a game I'm playing, what is the name of this game? It's like if you're doing spontaneous painting, you start to wonder, what is coming out on this picture? Oh, it's a tree. So I got curious about what I was up to and what was moving in me, and I realized the closest way I could explain it is that it really does look to me like it's all connected. It's like, to me, that's just mind-blowingly clear. We are all connected. Holy cow!
Mm-hmm.
And so it made sense to me to see really everything I do. I no longer think that my work is necessarily the most valuable thing I do in the world. I don't know if it's the baby sweater I'm knitting for a refugee child, or a sock I give to a neighbor, or a casual conversation on the street, or an animal I rescue. I'm not in the business of evaluating my contributions. So it really looks to me like everything is a flow and that there's a reciprocity. And I guess selfishly, I wanted to explore and experience more of that phenomena of connection and reciprocity because it thrills me, it intrigues me. And so I'm playing with that. And I also, Nicole kind of woke up my attention. I realized if I'm going to play that way, I need to tune up my sensors for what's coming in. Like, for a long time, I'd seen the gift economy in terms of me doing a good thing. And that just, something about that smelled. And I came to see something about, oh, playing in a gift economy also means you've got to be able to harvest the gifts. You've got to be able to receive. And so you, Molly, might need to broaden your horizon and look to a wider field. You might need to get better at asking for things. You might need to accept more things. You might need to build more relationships with real people in community. And all of those responses I'm acting out were authentic responses. And I thought, this is kind of juicy. Here's a growing edge for me. And the critter I am likes to grow. I don't think there was anything there that needed to be fixed or expanded. I think it's more like the apple tree that I am saw some sun on that side of the fence, and so wanted to grow in that direction. So I just started to discover the areas in which this really touched me, and I am willing even to this minute to not really know why I'm playing this game or what the rules are until I hear them come out of my mouth. So I put it on my website when I had just the barest, paragraph of language to explain it. And I still stumble most of the time when I'm explaining it to a client. And that's fine with me, because it's kind of, I'm just breaking new ground for myself because it interests me, because I'm intrigued. And there's a profoundly selfish, but I hope with a meaningful spin on selfish spin on it for me. I'm not really doing it because I think that the world needs less capitalism. It's more that I need and am thirsty and hungry for more of an experience of the wealth that is all around us. And the day that I am hungry and thirsty more for a different form of wealth or more money, or want to play a different game, I'm ready to change ships and make it up differently in a heartbeat. Does that make sense, Judy?
What's so funny, Molly, is I could have said every word you just said. Literally, I could have said every single word you just said.
Yeah.
For me, it was, what was knocking at the door was, I wonder if I could make a lot of money. That was where my branch started leaning and just kind of kept needling me. So it's just hilarious to me that literally as I was listening, I was like, yeah, that's exactly.
See, I bought Mary's book, or one of them, I think, How to Price Like a Girl. I bought it and I read it one night and I'm going, yeah, cool, absolutely, oh yes, yippee. There wasn't a word in it that, went, oh, that's so wrong.
So yeah, so
I'm going to have to explain this to Mary.
Right, but it's fascinating, isn't it?
It is.
And that we're coming from the same place, but we're just going in whatever creative direction that we want to go in.
Yes.
And this happens to be the medium right now. Yeah. That's all.
And Doug has a question here. In the 3 principles, are our trying to figure it out thoughts about money keeping us from having divine thoughts about money? And how do we do that? And you see, I'm whenever I wonder about a divine thought, I get a little suspicious about this is for me, Doug, about what I'm up to, because I have a lifelong habit of looking for the right, the true, the thing. And it looks to me more and more like they're all divine thoughts. And I mean, all thought comes from that infinite space. And there is it seems to me like the divine, if we're going to personalize it, has an infinite appetite for showing up in many different ways and playing many different games in the world. So Mary's experiments and adventures with money look to me like an expression of divine thought about money, and so do mine. And Doug, I'm curious if this even begins to touch what you're wondering about when you ask that question. Does it? Okay, I see a nod, but feel free to say more if you want.
Yeah, that's a really good point. All our thoughts are divine thoughts, and I guess that's the point of the three principles, correct?
Yeah.
Divine mind, divine
And
consciousness.
yeah, after a thought has taken form in me or Mary or you or anyone, and I get attached to it, it's got a personal dimension. And if it has a limiting or anxious or contractive vibe about it, then for me, I like to know that there's more where that came from. I don't have to settle for that. There's another divine thought behind that one. So it's not really whether or not they're divine to me. It's what's the feeling that's coming with this line of thinking and with this way of living. And is it expansive? Is it connecting? Is it satisfying? Is it engaging? Is it fun? Does it leave me with what Sid Banks called a deeper feeling, a nicer feeling?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I tend to just not really parse my thoughts very much and just go towards the feeling of expansion, as you said. Mm-hmm. I just head in that direction. If there's ever a question in my mind, I just aim for that. Mm-hmm. And that's it. That's kind of my true north, I guess you would say.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess the image that comes to me is if I'm lost in the forest, I don't take my compass apart.
Right. Yeah. If I'm sitting there going, is this the right thing? Is that the thought? Then I just kind of stop the whole thing and go, nah, yeah. I don't need to listen to any of that. It's all baloney. Or to go to your thing, it's all BS.
Yeah. And then in practical terms, I either keep moving and see what happens, or I go in a different direction and see what happens, or I stop and see what happens. Yeah. But it's not that I have some methodology of knowing how things are going to turn out. The great thing for me about this understanding is I don't have to know how things turn out. And since I don't, that's really good news.
Yeah, isn't that a relief? I mean, and in terms of money, that's a huge thing because I used to think I had to know that stuff.
Right.
Or everything was going to fall apart. And now that doesn't even enter my consciousness anymore. That kind of, I can't relate to that anymore.
Yeah.
This doesn't come to me anymore, which is a huge relief. Huge.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, thank you, Alan. Takeaways occur to me. We have a couple of minutes, and I thought if any of you have a takeaway you would like to share, please do. And Mary, what would you like folks to be walking away with? What are you walking away with?
Well, I'm just walking away with a huge smile on my face because it's just so funny to me that we are really in the same place and just following our own creative impetus here.
Yeah.
And yours is in one way and mine is in another way, but it's still all coming from the same infinite well of ideas.
Yeah. And what I see when I look at you that mirrors what I experience in me is that we're both having a lovely experience of wealth.
Yeah.
Gail, let me unmute you. You're unmuted.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, I'm on my phone, and so the camera off is better.
Okay.
This has been so much fun. So for me, I think I'm just taking away the lighthearted, playful game nature of this. I kind of visualize like the money game board, and Molly has a blue piece, and Mary has a red piece, and I probably have a yellow piece. So
Yeah.
It lightens it up for me, because I've always struggled with the fact that it seems like I don't charge enough by coach standards, but it always feels like it's okay to me. So I don't know. I feel better about it now. So
Oh, that's great.
yeah.
Thanks, Gail.
Yeah, super. Anyone else want to share a takeaway? Joanne, you are unmuted.
Okay. Well, I have this sense of a little more, it feels more freeing. I think in my head, I was thinking, I don't think that much about money. But as you two were talking, I thought how much I really do think about it. And the realization of that came forward, which is really good. That extra thinking that I wasn't even aware of. So it just feels freer.
That's great.
Yay.
That's good. Well, I don't know that we did a very good fight of the century, Mary.
We didn't.
Darn.
It's a draw.
We're going to have to try again.
We'll have to try again on some other topic.
Thank you so much. When does you're about to roll out a new program about money, I think. So
Yeah,
I would love to give you a chance to pitch it.
Oh, thanks. Yes, I have a program about money called Let's Make Money, Honey, that I opened a little while ago, and then I closed enrollment, and I'm opening it up again on September 16th. So it'll be ready for people at that point. And it's a really, as you can tell by the name, it's a very lighthearted look at money and just having fun and seeing what we can create. And there's a little bit of a community aspect of it too. We have a Facebook group and some calls and things. So it's just been a real nice experience to help people lighten up around money.
Yeah. I have to say, having seen a lot of people come and go over the years that I've been a coach in the realm of helping people make money, Mary, from what I've seen of her programs and the things I've read that she's written, is such a solid approach. And obviously, I love where you're coming from, because I'm coming from the same place. And I can attest to the skill and care with which she's put together guidance for folks who want to do something about it in the realm of making money. So
thanks, Molly. That's really nice. Thank you.
Well, thank you, everyone. This was a thrill. What fun to hear you say, Mary, what I thought when I read your book. She's saying the same thing I am, which was kind of what I thought we'd do, but you never know.
You never know.
All right, everyone. Take care, and please share the link to where you got to this Zoom conference with friends and colleagues and family who might be interested, because the recording will be up shortly.
Great.
Okay. Take care, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Bye.